KCRW sponsors include A24, presenting Moonlight, a film chronicling 3 chapters in the life of a young black man discovering his identity and experiencing first love as he moves from childhood into manhood. In theaters now.
Hi, I'm Elvis Mitchell, and thanks for listening to The Treatment. Some of the most entertaining stories produced today, however, are not on the big screen, but they can be heard on KCRW's Unfictional. Intimate stories and artful documentaries crafted by some of the most talented radio producers across the world. Check it out. You can find Unfictional on KCRW's iTunes page. From KCRW Santa Monica and KCRW.com, it's The Treatment. It's The Treatment, although today I'm not in Santa Monica, I'm in Glendale. If you see the new movie Road Hard, it takes a look at the life of a guy who got his start kind of in about 20 years ago, using stand-up in other venues, like on a TV show making fun of masculinity on radio. It's a lot like the life of my guest, Adam Carolla, who co-wrote and co-directed the film Road Hard. First of all, Adam, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Because I think what's really funny is how much of your life is in both this and The Hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's really these like bookends, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I felt like I've lived a few lives. The first movie I did, The Hammer, was a carpenter who was a boxer, which was part of my past. And then this is more of a stand-up comedian who had some success in television and had to go back and get in touch with his stand-up roots, not because he wanted to, but because he got divorced and he needed money. And Hollywood was, all honey boo-boo now. And it's, semi-autobiographical, but it's true in that when I lost my job in terrestrial radio in 2009, the economy was in the tank, the phone wasn't ringing. I had this run where I got, it's not quite cocky, but the phone never stopped ringing for 15 years. My biggest problem was having too many jobs, radio jobs, TV jobs, whatever jobs. And then all of a sudden, 2009, someone flipped a switch and it just stopped. And I just realized, oh my God, the only way I can support my family, and I have 2 twins at this point that are, 3 years old, 2 years old, I got to hit the road. And, it's pretty humbling. And the road is kind of fun when you're 27, but it's not so fun when you're 45. And, I had no choice.
Well, what's interesting about both these movies, too, is they're both movies about guys taking a look at their past lives, kind of reassessing. And they were both kind of inspired by that period for you, that period around 2008, 2009?
Yeah, I mean, The Hammer was more just about unrealized potential. The guy could have been good, but he just quit. It's so much nicer if you have potential to be injured in a horrible industrial accident than it is to just quit, because you have to live with that your whole life, that just quitting part. This is more of a story about going backwards in life, which is tough. So you have a lot of people out there that say, hey, man, if I made $500,000 a year, I'd be the happiest mofo on the planet. Yeah, but not if you made 1.5 for the previous year. You would then be miserable with your 500K. So what is it? Is it the money? No, it's 500K is 500K. It's stepping backwards. It's going from big deals and holding deals and development deals and this and that and the other to going to Addison, Texas and doing 3 shows at a strip mall.
And being ripped off by the club owner.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. A lot of comics will show up at the club that afternoon and walk through the place with a little clicker. Click, 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 counting chairs. Because at the end of the night, you get paid by who comes through the door. And at the end of the night, every comedian will tell you this, the club holds 375. You're up on stage for 90 minutes. You're looking out to what looks like an absolutely filled house. And then the club owner comes back to settle up and he goes, well, we had 261 people in here. And you're like, whoa, there was 110 open seats in here? Because I looked, there wasn't. Well, there was the radio comms. We gave some radio comps away. 110 radio comps you gave away? Look, here's what you get. So a lot of guys got hip to that, and they just started walking around and literally counting the seats.
What's the Chuck Berry story? He basically demanded these guys pay him in cash before the show because he said, listen, you're going to pay me or I'm not going to go out. So it's that whole sort of thing of your life not being in your own hands. And that's what both these movies are about.
By the way, there's another Chuck Berry story that's far more interesting, but we'll get into that in another episode.
But what's interesting about both these things, these are both about guys who I think potential or unrealized potential is a part of both these stories.
Yeah.
And guys reclaiming their lives at kind of a midlife point.
Yeah.
Which is kind of passage kind of stuff, and you reinvented yourself a few times in your life, haven't you?
Well, I sort of have. Yeah. I mean, I came out of the factory really out of high school, just sort of with nothing. I was kind of warehouse. I just started digging ditches and working I worked as a day laborer, basically, on construction sites. And then I turned myself into a carpenter at a certain point. And I always had a passion for boxing, and I did some Golden Gloves and a little amateur boxing and stuff like that.
How many fights?
I mean, I had a bunch of fights in the Golden Gloves, but
right.
Just the Golden Gloves was the only tournament I did in 1985. It was at the Olympic Auditorium. Before they remodeled it, it was a pretty dank place. And at a certain point, I wanted to get out of carpentry and teaching boxing into comedy because I just felt like it's a better life. There's just, literally, I wanted to own a house. I wanted insurance. I wanted medical and dental. I didn't see it happening teaching comedy classes at Bodies in Motion for $20 a pop and, building people entertainment units. I didn't see it. So I thought, all right, let's start working on comedy. And I started working on comedy, and then I met Jimmy Kimmel, and the rest is sort of history. But in the movie, the guy starts off as a stand-up like everybody. And it's in the movie, but the part that cracks me up, and I'll give you guys a little heads up. When you see the comedian who's 50 years old, who has been divorced twice, who is now out of rehab, and they say to the guy, you did stand-up for the beginning part of your career, and then it's been like 20 years since you've done stand-up. Why now? Why go back out on the road now? Why are you playing live shows now? And they go, I miss the electricity of the live stage. No. When you miss the electricity of the live stage, you go back after you're done with your sitcom, because they go on hiatus. You go back and do some live dates. These guys don't go back because they don't want to go back. They've been through it. Is there, a soldier who's longing to go back to boot camp 20 years into a military career? I don't think so. And this is sort of comedy boot camps. A lot of travel, a lot of bad stuff. Booze, drugs, women.
One of my favorite shots in the movie, by the way, is when you're like standing by that chafing dish and there are like 3 tater tots and one is broken in half.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, if you just want to work it out from a timeline, everybody else who's staying at the Red Roof Inn that has the complimentary buffet in the morning from 7 to 11, those guys didn't go out and work till 1 a.m. that night. Those guys are traveling sales dudes who are trying to make an early flight. It's the comedian who went to bed drunk at 1:30, who gets up at 10:45 and heads out to the burnt offerings that are left behind after all the truckers and all the salesmen completely decimate the buffet. So there's always they don't refill. It's free. So, it's kind of first come, first serve. They always get there last. The comedians are always the last.
My guest, whose voice I know you know better than mine, is Adam Carolla. He just evoked a 1987 horror movie, Burnt Offerings. Great title, by the way. It's The Treatment. One of the things that I think about you in terms of being a craftsman is that you choose words. I mean, your word choices are really deliberate and selective, and your word choices are basically almost like somebody who's still using words, uses everything as a tool.
Yeah. Well, I do like as you sit in the studio and lean against the console that I built. I like construction. I like putting things together, but it's I think people oversimplify it where they go, oh, he likes working with his hands. I don't like working with my hands. I like working with ideas.
But it's the same kind of
putting
thing.
those
You're
things
still
together.
You're still making choices. You're still constructing things, aren't you?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I've never really thought about it that way, but I do. Yes, I love design. I love construction. I love execution of design, and that's what the construction is. And I do love when a joke, certainly not only mine, anybody's, has just the right word choice, especially if it's one that you wouldn't have chosen yourself.
But I just find myself interested, too, because this was the movie you chose to co-direct instead of putting it in somebody else's hands. Mm-hmm. And I wonder where that came from for you.
You know, directing is a little bit overrated.
How do you mean? Because you're somebody who's talked to Francis Coppola, by the way. Did you say that to him?
No, I would not. He'd have me snuffed out. He'd have me eliminated. No, if you're going to do Apocalypse Now, go get somebody who knows what they're doing. And if you're doing The Godfather, go get someone who knows what they're doing. But if you're doing a smaller romantic comedy, I feel like I've been directing myself for a long time. Like, we do man show bits all the time. We'd have a director, but I was ultimately directing myself. And when you star in a movie, you do sort of direct yourself because you choose your inflection, you choose the cadence, you choose the way the product, meaning the script, the words are delivered. So to say that George Clooney is not directing himself just because he's not in Video Village, 10 yards to the right, staring into a monitor is really not true. I mean, whoever we're talking about, unless we're dealing with animals or kids, you're pretty much, I get the feeling that Meryl Streep is directing herself when she's doing it, or Christoph Waltz, and there's plenty of room for good directors. But to me, once the words are there and once the capable cast is there, I hired people like Diane Farr and Ileana Douglas and Jay Moore and David Allen Greer, Larry Miller, guys I knew could act.
A lot of people who've been through here, by the way.
Been through here, had a lot of experience, but I always knew while David Allen Greer or Larry Miller may be stand-ups in a lot of people's minds, I know there's so much more there in the acting department.
David trained as an actor.
David is, that guy does, he goes to Broadway, he does a Mammoth play that's, as serious as cancer, and then he comes back and does Porgy and Bess. That's the kind of range that guy has. And he, in a weird way, being good at everything, it doesn't get you a payday. I mean, not that we should feel sorry for Dag, but what I'm saying is you'd be much better off in life monetarily just being Michael Jackson, picking something and doing it, rather than going, I'm going to be on Broadway 1 minute, I'm going to be doing a Mammoth play the next, I'm going to be doing stand-up the day after that, and I'll be doing a TV show the day after that.
But you just described your own life in some ways.
I did, and you do suffer from, financially. You're much better off just saying, I want to do a late night show and focusing 1,000% on that than you are going, I want to write a book. I want to do a podcast. Oh, I want to make an independent film.
But there's more satisfaction in doing all those other things. Obviously, for you, there has to be.
Yeah, there is. But there's a bigger payday, and I'm fine. You don't need to feel sorry for me. I'm
I heard
fine.
About your cars. I know you're fine.
There's probably a greater payday in focusing in one sport, so to speak. And there's a sport. I look at comedy as being athletic. They go, okay, but what's your sport? Is it stand-up? Is it hosting shows? Is it writing? Is it sitcoms? Is it late night? What's your sport? We all know that if Michael Jordan, forget about Jackson, if Michael Jordan wanted to just play 14 sports, he wouldn't get paid. He tried it. He didn't get paid.
Well, there's reasons for that, too. We have to take a break. My guest who's giving us career advice, don't listen to him, is Adam Carolla, best-selling author, the biggest podcast in the world. It's The Treatment. You don't know who I am. There's more to come. Stay with us.
Take KCRW with you on one of our mobile apps, available for iPhone, Android, and BlackBerry devices. Stream KCRW live, listen to podcasts, and our News 24 and Eclectic 24 streams. Learn more and download at kcrw.com/apps.
Welcome back. I'm sitting with a guy, don't listen to any of his advice because he's doing very, very well for himself, Adam Carolla. It's The Treatment. His new film, he co-wrote and directed, is Road Hard. I just sort of find that in listening to the show and reading the stuff, and even watching the movie, you strike me as a guy who has a fast-moving, easily bored mind. And one of these reasons you do so many things is that you get bored easily if you're just concentrating on one thing.
Yeah, I never really think about bored. I don't know why. Maybe it just hasn't been part of my vocabulary for the last decade, but I want to accomplish things while I'm here. And I am overcompensating to some degree for my past life.
In what way? What do you mean?
Well, I didn't learn to read or write early on in life. I got kind of warehoused at school. I found myself just sitting there, just sort of staring out the window, not doing any of the work that was required. Then when I got out of high school, I started cleaning carpets, which basically you go to the Sizzler in Conejo, you show up at 10:30 because the place closes at 11. The manager gives you the keys and tells you to lock up when you leave and throw it through the mail slot. And then you just sit there from 11 o'clock till 5 a.m. staring down at a piece of greasy carpet and hearing the whiz of the carpet cleaning machine. And went from that to digging ditches, humping drywall, cleaning up trash. I wasn't being creative. I wasn't writing. I wasn't creating. I wasn't telling jokes. I wasn't entertaining anybody. I wasn't taking what I want to do when everyone says, let's really just distill down what you do. What do you want to do? I say, I would like to take my ideas and insert them into your head. That's my job. That's what I want to do. And then when they go into your head, I want them to make sense to you. That's what I want to do.
But my point, though, is that obviously as you were doing those jobs and building up that skill set and learning that if you put the work into anything, it'll pay off, which is what we learned from all that, right?
And not at the time, I wasn't thinking that way, but yeah, I did.
You know what I'm saying, right?
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. For me, I was in survival mode. I was in a mode where I realized very quickly that my family was not going to take care of me and that nobody was going to take care of me. There was no money and there was less interest on my family side. So I said, I got to figure out a way to eat. I got to figure out a way to get an apartment. I want to drive a car. I got to figure out these things. How am I going to do this? I'm on my own. So there wasn't, you say, well, I had a great work ethic. Well, it's like saying, guy being chased by a bear, boy, that guy really gets a lot of exercise.
Okay, but let me say,
it's like he's scared. He's running.
Yeah, you're scared, but certainly you can basically go hide instead of running or trying to figure out a plan. You know what I'm saying? And so when you turn to this creative life, you already knew that if you put in this kind of effort, you get this kind of reward.
I did not know that.
No?
All I knew was...
You didn't think that if I put in this kind of work, then something will come of it? You didn't think that?
No, because nothing positive or almost nothing positive ever happened in my life leading into this world. I didn't think it was going to work out for a second. I didn't think it was going to work out because that's where I came from. I came from a place where nothing ever worked out. I understand the feeling that people have when they come from that place. And we always sort of assign a socioeconomic component to it, which is true. People are poor. But it's not the money. It's the nothing ever works out where we're from in this family. And
I'm from that kind of background, too. So I know what you're saying. But I got that. My dad was somebody who worked 2 jobs my whole life. I saw there weren't any opportunities if I didn't. And the thing I got from him, at least I knew I'd get the satisfaction of putting in the effort.
Right. Yeah, well, look, I was definitely going to go out on my shield. I mean, I was going to die trying, but I did not think it was going to work out. But working out was academic to me. The deal was I wanted to do something with my mind and not something with my back. And that was the only plan. And it could have been writing greeting cards for Hallmark. It did not matter. Just something that involved my mind. I didn't need to be in front of the camera. I didn't need to be behind the microphone. I would have been perfectly happy if you said you can join the staff writing team of Full House. There's 12 dudes. You sit there and write jokes for John Stamos. I said, fine, sign me up. I would have loved it. Now, I'm hoping at some point I would have grown tired of that and wanted to do something else. But the in front of the camera, behind the microphone, it was not something that I needed to do.
Because, see, I just think he was being somebody who saw if there's an opportunity there, you would find a way to seize it. I think of the ways just driving around, and people talk about getting in the car and, like, listening to me when I'm on. I would drive around for just listening to all of Loveline, because I heard this is a guy who basically is turning a lifestyle question show into a way to do stand-up.
Yes, that's what I was doing, yes.
And so that's what I'm saying. You see an opportunity, you go in there, you put in the time and the effort. You certainly got to have the goods. That goes without saying. But if you do that, then something will come out of it.
Yeah, or not, and then you're just the guy who tried, which is fine. I tell people all the time, even at this stage of my career, half the stuff I try doesn't work out. Nothing comes out the other end. I have meetings with people. I have ideas for shows. I pitch this. I pitch that. They go nowhere. I mean, I work for free a lot. And I tell sort of young comics or young whoever, don't think that I don't work for free. Don't think Jimmy Kimmel doesn't work for free. He has a good job. But don't think we don't go into Comedy Central, spend half an afternoon pitching something, have it never see the light of day, and go home. And there's not a check waiting for us that says, look, this is for gas. Here's for time and effort. Here's what your hourly wage. There's tons. And I think that I would say that of any business person. There's tons of for free.
What I'm hearing here, and what I hear so much in what you do, and even going back to Love Lines for me, which is where I was really introduced to you, is there's a real common sense approach to the way you think of comedy, to the way you think of directing. And it even seems like it comes from literally like a ground-up foundation of if you do this in this way, this will happen. And I wonder how conscious you are of that sort of common sense aspect to the way you live your life.
I can take anything and make it boring.
No, that's my job. Come on now.
I mean, I can take all the artistry out of comedy, out of independent films. I can just remove every ounce of every scarf, every beret, every set of tinted non-prescription glasses. I can take it all out and just distill it down to a sort of pragmatic, practical, here's how it's going to work. And look, when you're shooting an independent film, you have 19, 20, 21 days. You better hurry. And if you're sitting around going, I ain't feeling it today, you're in trouble. Look, I've never had writer's block. The reason I've never had writer's block is because I can't afford that luxury. I'm working 3 jobs. I want to write this movie Road Hard. Kevin Hench has an office on the Radford studio lot. I agree to meet him over there on a couple of Saturdays so we can work on this thing because he's working full-time and I'm working full-time. And we carved out a Saturday, and we're sitting in his empty office on a Saturday, and I can't have writer's block. I don't have enough time during the week to afford that. And if you say to yourself, I'm going to remove the art, I'm going to just focus on the craft part of it, to me, it's a much more fruitful way of going about it. You don't look like Johnny Depp at the premiere, but you do end up getting things done.
You get to end it with a movie. But my point is just that even when there'd be some of these crazy calls, you just kind of go, what are you talking about? And just, again, that common sense approach to comedy, just sort of saying the thing that needs to be said, this is what you do, this is what I do, is a really big kind of guiding light in your life and your career.
I treat I'm into vintage race cars, and I'm into driving them, but I'm into the technology at the time of them. And
the craftsmanship, too.
And the craftsmanship. And I love the fact that when you see those cars, and you're going to see them in a few minutes because we're going on a tour, you'll see, they took the battery and they moved it from the front, they put it in the back, and they It's on the passenger side because there's enough weight on the driver's side. It's the weight of the driver. Let's shift it over here.
It's all problem solving.
Every piece on that car only exists to make it go faster or cool it or stop it. That's it. And, I say to people all the time, they say, how fast are you going? How fast are you going? How fast do you go? And it's everyone's first question. And I say, when I tell them I got back from Laguna Seca and did a race, how fast? How fast? How fast? I go, I don't know. They go, why not? I go, car has no speedometer. They go, what? No speedometer? Because in their mind, this is a dashboard that looks like a cockpit of a fighter jet, and there's 30 gauges. None of them are speedometers.
They basically know how the car is doing. It's basically you're checking out every part of the car.
Yeah, when you're in the straightaway and you're not vibrating too much and you have a minute, you want to look down and see how the oil pressure's doing and you want to see how the water temp's doing. And a lot of guys, and I'll do it too, put like a yellow line. And if you see that thing get past that yellow line on that gauge, you better shut it down because it's going to blow up. But everyone's obsessed with the speedometer. And I say, the reason a car doesn't have a speedometer is because it doesn't get you around the track any faster. So it's academic. It's a little extra weight. It's one more thing to look at. Now, what it has is a huge tachometer, and that tachometer is pivoted so that you see the top of the rev range at the top. It's turned, however many degrees to the left. And you'll see, because you're not interested in what's going on.
You just don't want to go in the red.
Under 4,000 RPM, under 5,000 RPM, not interested. Interested in over 7,500 RPM. And also, the speedometer would probably have a cable that was running to the transmission or some other part that was robbing the crank of the engine of just a minuscule amount of horsepower. And my point is, that's the way I like to lead my life. If I don't need it, get rid of it. And if somebody says, look, speedometer, what's it weigh? 9, 10, 12 ounces? What's the cable take off the crank? 1/10 of 1% of a horsepower? I still say, get it out. And that's just the way I go through my life. And that's the way those cars are built. And that's the difference between tenths of a second and, fifth place.
But I guess what I'm saying here over and over again is just that your compass points you in that direction. It's even the way you do comedy, the way you work, it's all about practicality and putting in this and just looking at the most obvious way of sort of dealing with something and solving it as quickly and expeditiously as possible.
Yes, that's what I do. And look, I don't look at making an independent movie as art as much as I look at it as a problem to be solved. Now, I probably won't tell my kids about my theories. Listen, problem one, problem two, hop on daddy's knee. Let me explain something to you. But, let's not call it a problem. Let's call it a challenge. How do you raise $1.5 million to do this? How do you assemble the small army of people you need to do this? How do you carve time out of a super busy schedule to do something that's going to take 10 or 12 hours a day out of your schedule? How do you get David Allen Greer to a delicatessen on a Friday night that's closed that we have to trade out for morning time, but because the deli closes at 10 o'clock at night, we got to shoot from midnight till 6 a.m. when they open again? How do you get Phil Rosenthal and David Allen Greer out there on that Friday night? Phil's in New York half the time. David's on the road the other half the time. How do you solve all of these problems? That's what movie making is for me, but it's sort of what life is for me.
My guest, who sees romance in everything, clearly, is Adam Carolla. I can't thank you enough for doing this, Adam. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Elvis.
My guest is Adam Carolla. His new film as co-director, co-writer, and star is Road Hard. The show was recorded here at his studios, which he built by hand. I'm looking around at me right now. It's recorded here by Chris Loxamara. It's mixed by Melissa Morden, edited and produced by Jenny Radelet. I'm going to look at cars. This is The Treatment. To catch up on past episodes of The Treatment, go to KCRW.com or listen on your smartphone with KCRW's mobile apps, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. The Treatment is produced and distributed by KCRW Santa Monica.